Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm Captain Levins with the police department. Bill, this is Sergeant Wolf, John. We're both on the SWAT team with the police department, so that portion of our job is kind of what brings us here today. We've been both involved with SWAT the majority of our career, so you're looking at over 20 years, or in the area 20 years each. It's not a feel-good topic, active shooter, but it's something that we have to discuss. We're doing this training for everybody in the city. It's something that needs to be done. There's not an active threat or any reason why it's happening now, other than anybody that's been paying attention in the media, in the world. You can see this has been a trend, unfortunately, in our country, and I don't see it stopping. It's been going on for a lot longer than people realize. Active shooters is not something that's new, but it's been increasing. Don't have the exact reasons for that. A little bit of the history, what leads us here today. This is not a complicated or a great end and solution, run, hide, and fight. You probably think when you look at that, what else can I do? There aren't a lot of other options, but we'll go through it. The fact that we're actually here today talking about it is the most valuable part, something that's not talked about, and just, you know, you keep it quiet really isn't a smart way to go about your life. You have to actually be aware of what's going on. Columbine active shooter was probably one of the ones that was most famous, and that was with police departments. That changed what we did. Prior to 1999, you know, police would respond, you surround it, you wait for the SWAT team to come in and deal with it that way. They found, obviously, the waiting that the police did on that incident resulted in a lot more lives lost, and as a result, police tactics changed, and active shooter protocol, as we call it, got into place, where we respond, whether it's an individual officer or a group of officers, and we actually go immediately in while it's an active scene to go ahead and try to eliminate that threat. And that's still pretty much the standard protocol as far as police tactics. There's a whole series of training that we put police officers through so they're properly prepared to respond, but that pretty much stayed in place. It's gotten more complicated with weapon systems, explosives, and things like that. But what changed for you inside of an event from just hiding, it was usually locked down and just hide and wait it out. That pretty much changed in December when, 2 years ago now, or 1 year ago, Sandy Hook with the elementary school kids, because they were all hiding in the classroom and they could have got out. There's a lot of things that could have been done, and resulted in a lot of unfortunate deaths. So as a result of that, it changed into more of this run, hide, or fight mentality. I can tell you that it's still changing as we go, because you kind of have two different types of active shooters. You have what we would maybe look at as the traditional active shooter. You have someone that has some a mental issue or a mental breakdown, some emotional problem that causes them to react in this way. And they go in. Traditionally, it's been a single person that goes in and does one of these terrible events. Well, as you see now, what you saw in California, overseas, you end up with another element. There's a whole coordinated, more of a planned out effort, multiple people, kind of falls in more of a terrorist style. They're really two different elements for us. Our responses, we're adjusting them a little bit with police, but inside, as far as what we're going to go through, these things here are still apply, and I think this will give you your best options for something to do. So as in law enforcement, we want to give you options. We want you to at least know that there's some things that you can do that would increase your likelihood of surviving an event. We'll go through some fine details of these in a few minutes, talk about how fast they happen and how fluid of an event it is. And the first few seconds to minutes is where a lot of things happen, and that's where if you change what you're doing, your likelihood at survival increases greatly. I'm going to show you a quick video. Many of you might have seen this video. It's a Department of Homeland Security video, but it goes through a little bit what we're going to talk about.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference: run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable, and may evolve quickly.
Left, slice and get my back.
The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter.
Shots down the hall. Shots down the hall. I got rear.
Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
Okay. So it's not a feel-good thing. There are more graphic videos that are out there that are made for these kinds of things. But in short, that's the reality of the situation we have. And the actor in there was walking calmly, very methodically. That's pretty much what you can expect. The people that have committed these things are in a certain state of mind. They're not frantic. They're not just running through. And you can use some of those things to your advantage as far as it gives you time to put distance and time between you and that person. So they have the order of run, hide, and fight. Recently we were just reading some stuff that was it in the Washington Post?
Washington Post, I believe.
That's come out. People are studying this all the time. Hiding is still a good option if that's the one that you have, but it may be like the last. It's probably the last safest option there. So if you can run, or if you're in a situation where you need to fight, that may be better than just cowering behind a table. And we'll go through a couple of those things in detail. The most recent study was through 2013, but I can tell you as we go through it, obviously 14 and 15 weren't any better years for us. We continued to have active shooter instances throughout the country, and they continue to cause more and more casualties. What's important, I wanted you to notice off the slide, is a couple of things. One, it says the shooter's age 18 to 62, and we didn't put anything else on there. I mean, that's anybody. I mean, it can be anybody. There really is no person. Statistically, it's usually a single person, a male usually, but that's not even becoming the current trend either. So there really is no one suspect that you're looking at. But 24% are in the educational environments and 7% at the higher educational. So you're talking, that's the colleges. And when most people think about active shooters, they think schools, and that gets the media going, and most of what burns in our minds is, wow, these happened at the colleges, they happened at the schools. Well, 70% are your environment. And I know it's not a feel-good thing, but 70% are your business, commercial instances, okay? So you have to be just aware that as far as where we work, and when we work in large buildings, that is traditionally where the majority of these kinds of things do happen. They just don't always ring in your mind the same. 70% end in 5 minutes or less. I can tell you most of the damage is done and is in the first few seconds to minutes. There's a statistic that's not here that if you can survive the first 17 seconds, you're statistically 3 times greater to survive. So first 17 seconds. So the run, hide, fight model really does work, because if you can separate yourself from what's actually happening and give us time to respond, and we'll go through what Dearborn has to offer you as far as working in our city, you'll see that your survival rate increases quite a bit. Now, 40% commit suicide. These are things that are changing all the time. Now, if I did this presentation for years, or the topic for years, it's changed. It used to be 85%. It used to be 85% would commit suicide, and it was the minute that the police would arrive or they're confronted. It's changing. I don't know why, and I don't know that there's anybody that has a clear reason that's why that's changed. Traditionally, they didn't have a planned escape. Suicide was the end. Now they're trending, they went to what we call a mobile active shooter, where instead of just targeting one place, they might have committed homicides at their house against their family, then they go to a business or a location, or there was another instance where they went to a movie theater and then they moved to a Walmart. Why these things were done, we don't know, but they were moving from location to location until the police stopped them. Now we're starting to see a little bit of a trend where people have planned some escape, so that changes things for us a little bit, but it really doesn't change things for you. You still need to just separate yourself from the event and try to survive that first few minutes or seconds. This is a short list. It doesn't include everything. This was just 2013 on active shooter instances. Some of them may be familiar to you. The point on this was many of them aren't. It just becomes part of what's going on in society today. And if I had screens for 14 and 15, we would just have more and more screens on how these are going on. One thing I wanted to bring to attention is the one thing you can't do is say, well, not us, not Dearborn. It did happen here. We did have one in 2009 at the Henry Ford College. And a lot of people don't remember that. It was a Good Friday in April, and it changed some people's lives forever. I was there. It changed my life. So we'll talk about that as far as how quickly we responded to that and how we were able to probably save a lot of lives that day. These here are just to kind of show you, obviously the trend is that they move up. You can take numbers and you can make numbers work for you or against you, but everybody knows that the active shooter instances have been increasing. They don't know exactly why, but they have been. We've read some stuff. They talk about people's thresholds, and they've kind of been broken, where people would think certain things are taboo. Well, I would never go to an elementary school and slaughter a bunch of kids, and then yet it happens. So things that were unspeakable, you would never go to a place of worship and do something, well, then it happens. So these thresholds are broken, and experts have said we're in a state right now where there isn't a threshold. People are continually trying to outdo the last event, and they put a lot of time and planning into it. And when you study these and you look how much planning goes in, it's kind of frightening. The actual number of casualties, you'll see that spikes. I think that's the threshold, the planning, the trying to one-up the last person that did it, but also the weapons that are being used, the kind of ammunition, like using Aurora, the Denver theater shooting. There was a lot of casualties there, and there would have been even more had he stuck with the AR assault rifle. But he had plenty of ammunition. He had a malfunction. Instead of clearing the malfunction, he transitioned to a shotgun and a pistol, and the death rate dropped a lot because the rounds, if you looked at that particular shooting, the theaters were connected and the rounds were going through the walls. So it wasn't just the theater that he was in, it was multiple theaters. We'll talk about that in a second on how some information can save your life as far as where you choose to hide. One thing out of this slide that's important, we talk about the fact that we're having this training is the most important thing. If you're not preparing, you're already failing. So we're preparing to succeed. That's what we do here as a department, as a city. You should do that individually. You have to survive whatever life dishes you. They are dynamic, they're rapidly changing. I think it's been well said in our other presentations, you may not just pick one avenue. You may be running and then it may be time to fight. You may be running and it may be time to hide. You may be hiding and it may be time to run. So you have to be able to just have a survival mental attitude so that you can make it through this.
The main thing to take out of today's training is, I don't know if you have a background in sports or whatever, psychology, we're trying to prepare the mind, okay? Athletes, before a game, they think about what they're going to be doing in the game, so much as to what this play is going to look like. How am I going to act when this happens? This is what we're starting to do today. We're trying to put you in the mindset when you go back to your workplace and you're with your coworkers, or even in your own lives, or your house, your shopping, whatever. What am I going to do if this happens? If you have some sort of mental preparation, it doesn't have to be an elaborate plan, run, hide, fight. As long as you have something that will give you an edge if, God forbid, something like this happens.
It's on this slide here as far as mental fire drills. Don't get stuck in the idea of fire itself, but the idea of mental practice. Anybody that has played sports would relate to it. That's what we use. But police officers do it all the time. We practice physically, we read books, we do those kinds of things, but we also have to mentally prepare ourselves. We'll go in a second and talk about how you process information, but we're no different than any other. We're just people like everybody else. And that shock factor affects us too. And I just practice mentally to get through it very quickly. So you guys have to be prepared in your mind that if something like this happens, that you won't hesitate, or the hesitation that you have is lessened because you've already prepared for it. Leave the belongings behind, keep on running. People have asked, well, where do you run? Well, run to where you're safe. I mean, this is not a planned event, so I can't tell you what direction or where to go. And calling 911 is important, and we'll get into that. Considering your physical ability to run, that's something to keep in mind as far as exposing yourself if you're going to run. Maybe staying put would be the best thing for you. Individually, you have to decide that. I do talk about a little bit on if there's time and you have someone that needs help that maybe is a cubicle next to you and they're handicapped or not as physically able, you have to be able to look inside yourself. If you're just going to run that other direction, maybe you can help that person hide, and then maybe you do have to run. But individually, you have to decide on who you work with as far as what you can do to try to help people as best as you can. I'll go back. The possibility of explosive devices, that actually goes all the way back to 1999. They did have pipe bombs and those things at Columbine. That's pretty much been now active shooter standard issued equipment anymore. They always come with their explosives. When you are running through the building or you choose to hide, if you see something that doesn't look right, that's a backpack that's laying there or an actual pipe with the end caps, it's not right. Don't touch it, don't mess with it. That's probably not a good spot to hide. I'd pick somewhere else because that's the reality. How many shooters, that's something that's changing. Traditionally, it's always been one. There's been a little bit of a tendency now to have more than one. I don't think that that'll become always common practice, but when you decide to run, if you can determine that there's more than one person, you have to be careful as far as exposing yourself. If you're aware of a gunman in a certain area, but you thought there was two, you don't want to come out of your hiding place and have the other person that is in a searching mode and you expose yourself that way. The 911 calls are important to us. Everybody's perspective and perception is different. The calls for us give us information. Information's power. It gets us to that location as quickly as possible, not just the building, but where in the building. And since the people are moving, it gives us continual updates. So if I'm getting calls from certain areas in the building and I can predict what direction to travel he's moving in. It gives us the ability to get there quicker. Only give the information as you know it. You don't have to add to it. A lot of people will add things just to try to get our response quicker. We come fast no matter what. Accurate information is the best information for us. This is a generic slide. More than likely, when you're involved in any kind of incident like this, or you're a victim of a crime or a witness on a crime, you're not going to remember everything, and it's not going to be accurate. You may only remember one particular thing because that's what you concentrated on, and that's okay. The size of the gun, we always laugh because it looks huge, but most people will tell us the gun was this big, you know, when we were looking at it, and it may feel that big when you're looking down the barrel of a weapon. But if you know who the person is, that information is important. That just happened in California. They actually knew who it was. So if you know who is in this event, which is different than your traditional crimes, you don't know who the suspect is. A lot of these, unfortunately, are current or former employees or students or those kinds of things. So if you know who the person is and you're confident in that information for us is really important so that we can go and stop what's happening. As far as hiding, everybody's played hide and go seek, so the rules are pretty clear. Anything goes, you can hide. We'll go over just a couple of things you need to keep in mind. The video did show you about dimming the lights, your phones now. Those things are important. Anything that could give you away, you want to go ahead and try to eliminate that. We talked a few minutes ago about giving us time. That's what all of these things will do. You just want to create time so the police officers can respond and eliminate this. When you are hiding, like the video did show also, you also have to be prepared for if somebody comes in the room. So you've blockaded the door, you've done everything you can do, don't stop your planning. Since you've made a commitment that you're going to stay in this room, now start planning for if that person does come in the room. Pick up some devices, whatever it is you can do, a chair, prepare yourself to go ahead and fight if that's the position that you're in. This is the most important thing as far as hiding. The rules are different than when you're a kid. So you have cover and you have concealment. Anybody in here that's former military would understand what we're talking about, but this is general military police terminology. Concealment is just something that's just hiding you. So your cubicle field, you can be hidden inside of your cubicle field, but it's not providing you cover or protection from a round. You know, rounds will go right through those kinds of things and it'll keep on traveling. If you find yourself that you're hiding in an area like that and you know I'm concealed but I'm not really protected, at least be aware that that's the area that you're in, and at least maybe try to get low to the ground. Just traditionally, most people when they fire a weapon and they're under stress, they do it at a normal eye level, and most people aren't shooting into the ground. So if you're down low on the ground, it increases your chances of not being struck. As it is, as far as moving, hiding, active shooters traditionally only hit 50% of what they shoot at, and most of what they're shooting at is just laying, hiding or in a corner of a room. And even then, they only hit 50% of what they shoot at. Even police officers, it's very difficult. It's not like it is in the movies where you shoot, you hit the person, that's that easy. Hitting moving targets and hitting targets that are fighting with you, it's a lot harder than people would think that it is. But keep this in mind in your workplace when you're thinking about routes that you would travel to get out of the building or areas you would choose to hide in. Which ones provide you the best protection? If there's a room that's cement walls, steel door, that's a good room. Don't commit yourself just to one area in your mind because that may be the area where the event's happening and now you're stuck in indecision again. You should have multiple things in your mind that you would think of. If it happened here, I would do this. If it happened there, I would do that. Just a few different options. Most guys, some ladies have belts. The belt can be fashioned, it can be fashioned for a weapon too. But you can secure your doors, you can tie up the opening doors with them. You can use leverage to your advantage. We make fun of this guy here. This is the one time in life that the more you ate for the holidays, the better you're off. Because at that point, the bigger you are, the harder it is for him to open that door. But note that, obvious things like he put his feet against the door, not his head. You don't want the door banging against your head, nor do you want, if they shot into the door, those kinds of things hitting anything that's vital.
This is a little bit about here at the deck. It's a map of, we have the first and second floor, it'll be the next slide. This is something the fire department has developed as a shelter in place. And as a part of our active shooter program, these give you options. Not all these rooms are going to provide you cover. They may provide concealment. It gives you one option. These are more focused at a storm, a tornado, a hurricane, whatever. These are the places that you need to go. You see the work areas outlined in the green, and then you have a green room. Same thing with the red, the yellow, so on and so forth. If you look in your work area, you will notice around the poles, there's yellow tape, green tape, whatever, around those to identify which area you're working in, okay? The shelter rooms are going to have a small 3x5 card up on top and also on bottom to identify that is the shelter room, okay? Also corresponding with these same colors are out in the parking lot, the light poles out there, okay? The idea is if there's a fire drill or there's an actual fire, these are the places that you're going to go to stage so that your supervisors, the fire department, we can all account for who was in the building. So again, it's more for a fire, natural disaster. That's what these are geared toward. As far as active shooter, it gives you an option, okay? The more options we can give you, the safer you all are going to be.
So these are important to have if you work here in the City Hall or the buildings you do work. If you have shelter areas, just be aware of what they're used for, and they may not apply in an active shooter situation. So make sure you have multiple options. Talked a little bit ago about trying to get through your thought process as quickly as possible. This works both ways. One, if you prepare and plan and you're mentally prepared, you can go through the process of observing things and orientating, deciding what you want to do and acting, and you want to get through that as quickly as possible. The other portion of this is if you decide to fight, the actual suspect has come in and he has an offensive mentality. He had a plan in his head and he doesn't plan to have resistance, and he's going to accomplish this vision or whatever it is that he wanted to do. If you can get him off of his thought process, he changes from an offensive mentality to a defensive mentality. And if he hasn't prepared for that, he's got to go into this same thought loop. And he's got to observe and orientate to what's happening to him. And he's got to decide what he's going to do. And you've just now created an advantage to yourself. If you are in a situation where you're fighting, like the video shows, work together. You can use somebody to distract someone's attention and attack them. Attack them in multiple ways with multiple people. I often say in groups like this, I'm former military, over 20 years in the police department, 20 years on a SWAT team. I have a gun on my side, and if you choose to overpower me right now, you will win. This group, and even a fraction of this group, can win. And I'm highly trained, and it doesn't matter. You can win that battle. You have to make that decision that you're going to win that battle. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, some things can happen, but you have a better chance of surviving fighting than you do laying there. And secondly, so do your coworkers and your friends. There's the congresswoman that was shot and killed, or actually was shot and injured. The people that helped take that suspect down, one was a 74-year-old unarmed man and a 61-year-old unarmed woman. Just chose to go ahead and take that guy out from what he was doing. So anybody is capable of doing it, but you can survive. I'm here, I'm ready to react, but I can't win the battle in this room. It's impossible. We talked about a lot of this here. You do want to try to separate the weapon from him, and it may be in the next slide coming up. Picking up the weapon isn't what we're looking for you to do. It was in here somewhere. But the weapon laying on the ground, if you move it to the side, have someone watch it so no one else picks it up. Just keep in mind, police officers are coming in. We have no idea, other than descriptions that have been coming into us, most of the time is usually not accurate. We don't know who the suspect or suspects are, and we go into a room, and all of a sudden, you with all good intention have a gun in your hand. We don't know that you weren't the one that was doing this. We are trained. We're not just going to gun anybody down, but at the same time, it would be a lot better position for everybody if the gun wasn't in your hand. So that's important for us to talk about. We put in here that fighting is a last resort. We really don't recommend that you run out and get into a confrontation with an armed person. That usually doesn't work out very well. But if you're forced into it, then that's when we recommend that you do that. Here's the weapon slide. I want to make sure we talked about it. Police will be coming in, and we'll now. You talked about in the slide as far as now Dearborn's coming. If it happens here, the police, the first thing that we're coming through, we're not there to render aid to everybody. I know that really doesn't sound good, but the first thing we have to do is stop the event of what's happening. So we're trained, we come right in through the building, and we follow whatever information that we're getting, and we address whoever's committing this act. That doesn't mean that help isn't coming. The first initial wave of officers are coming through. They're there to do that particular portion of it, but more people will be coming. So officers pass you and you're hiding or you're laying there. Don't think, one, it's not over, it's not safe yet, but secondly, more officers will be coming in. Now, a little bit, hopefully, that's a lot of bad news, so hopefully little things will make you feel a little better. As far as Dearborn itself, nationally, you're looking at response times are around 4 minutes for most police departments that aren't like a major city. In the city of Dearborn, we're at a minute, and I can tell you that most times it's less than a minute. And even in our own situation where it happened in 2009 at Henry Ford College, the first few phone calls that came in, it was about the first minute and a half to almost 2 minutes of phone calls really were talking about, it was other people's perceptions of things. It was a fight that was going on, they thought, between a guy and a girl. Some other calls came in, they thought that there was some kind of a sexual assault that was happening because they saw this individual standing over her, and it was around that 2 minute mark that a shot was fired. And that particular day, myself, I had just finished lunch, wearing dress clothes that day, and so at the 2 minute mark, and we arrived at the college campus and found the actual building, which was the Performing Arts Center. If you're familiar with it, it's somewhere towards the middle. There's about 120-yard or so run between where you could take the car as far as you could go, and then you had to run to the door. And we were entering that building at the 3.5 minute mark. And we were entering it with multiple officers, with high-powered weapons, and at close to around the 4.5-minute mark or so, we'd already went through about half of the first section of the building, and we had another shot that was fired. We were only maybe 20 feet from this guy, and we just didn't know it. Talk about the thought process. It goes through your head really quick, the reality of what you're in. It was muffled sound because it's a performing arts center, so it had sound barriers in the room. So I knew it was a shotgun, but it felt like it was farther away because you couldn't hear it, but yet I could smell it. So afterwards, it was really clear, boy, I should have realized how close I was. But there's so many things that go through your mind in these things. And I can tell you, when we got to the room that it happened, I won't go in every detail of what I saw, but initial thought, I said, this doesn't seem like it's real, but it is real. So the point being, on this particular incident, is that room that it happened in, there was an exit. That individual could have exited that building, and then there was an exit that was facing us coming down the hallway. And he had a choice that he could have escaped or he could have engaged us, and yet he took the high statistic choice of taking his own life. So that's what he did there. Now, he had done things in preparation that he was going to do more stuff. He did things in the room. He had reloaded the weapon. The fast response that we had stopped him from exiting that particular classroom. So we are prepared here in the city to come. Every officer, not just SWAT officers, will enter the building, and they will come and they will save lives. That's what we get trained to do. We have, fortunately, one of the few cities that has their own SWAT team. So we have our own SWAT team, we have our own bomb team, which is unique that most cities have a combined team that they have to wait on. The other advantage that gives us here is we have what we call SWAT cars, S cars, that are on the street 24 hours a day. They look the same as any police car, but they're not. Inside the SWAT car, we have SWAT officers, also a lot of SWAT equipment, and they immediately respond to these, and they're there in that less than 1 minute, and that's why we were able to enter that building and have all the things that we needed to take care of things. We do our regular training. This is not the training that we do. I say in a funny way, 2 out of the 3 of these are wrong for us. You can't run and you can't hide. So for us, this is not what we do. We actually have a lot of training that we go through as a department. The officers on the street are highly trained, and I want you to know that you're in really good hands in the city of Dearborn as far as what the police department has to offer you. We take this seriously, and we're ready every day. We hope that the day never comes, but if it were, that we're prepared to do that.
Everything that we're talking about today is just describing how bad this situation is. And if you, God forbid, are involved in a situation like this, it's going to be a million times worse. Understand that no matter how bad this situation is, your worst nightmare, it doesn't matter. We are coming. We will be there. We will get to you. Know that.
So one other thing that's unique for our city, so you're aware, I give a lot of credit to the police and fire unions that work these things out, but we have a tactical emergency medical program, which is a TEMS program, and we've spent the last 3 to 4 years where we have 3 firemen right now, we're going to grow it as we move forward, and we've trained them to be SWAT members on our team. And we've put them through all of the training that we have. We've put them through reserve police officer academies so that they can lawfully carry weapons. And we put them through our SWAT academy and some advanced tactical medical schools that are offered to just the smallest percentage of people. So we have full-time, highly trained medical personnel that do that every day with the fire department that can respond with us and come inside. So when we come inside, we actually have people that can render aid immediately with you. So we're pretty proud of getting that done, and we'll continue to develop that. What happens after, hopefully we're not involved in one of these things, and again, in Henry Ford, Everybody comes out of the buildings. We'll go through, just follow a police officer's directions. They'll give you the direction that you have. We'll have to search you, make sure that you're not one of the people that we're looking for. We'll get you to an area where you can safely sit down and be talked to about what you saw or heard or didn't hear or see. And we'll go through the whole after process, which is putting a criminal investigation together. People often ask as far as, well, I'm hiding, and how do I know when to come out? How do I know when it's clear? We'll tell you when it's clear. If you have that good of a hiding spot that you haven't been discovered and a lot of time has gone by, you won. You won the game. Just stay there. We will come and we will actually physically find you, and we'll bring you out. The questions get asked, well, how do we know it's the police? We'll make sure that it's our job to make sure that you're comfortable in knowing that we're the police. The video showed both tactical officers and uniform officers together. You'll see that. But you'll also see plain clothes. For myself, I was wearing a polo shirt and dress pants. You wouldn't have known I was a police officer except for the fact that I am one, and I'll make sure that I communicate that with you. If you have a cell phone, you're locked in a room, and the police are saying it's the police outside that door, you can always call 911, say what room you're in, say the police say they're at the door. Our dispatcher will confirm with you and say, yes, that is the police. You can open up the door and come in. Lastly, if you're just not going to open that door, we understand. We'll take the door off. We'll come in. we come in no matter what. So whether we have to force our way in or not, we'll come in, and we'll make sure that we get everybody out safely. Okay. We practice this. We've even taken small children. My one that's 24 now, but when she was littler, we took her over to Fortson. We took a bunch of kids and we had them hide, because kids can really hide. So we had them hide in the best spots they could hide. And so we could practice actually going through safely and finding people, because human beings are complicated. They can really, the minute you think they can't do something, then they do it. So they find some interesting places to hide.
Going back to that Henry Ford incident, everything, the initial response and getting to the bad guy, that happened in a mere minute, 3-4 minutes? The entire event lasted multiple hours. We were 2-3 hours into the event, and I was still clearing the building. So understand that if you're in a hiding position, you might be there for a while.
Because the priority, we do want to help people that have been hurt, and we do want to do those things, and we'll get the people that are hiding, but we know you're safe. So we have to prioritize what we're doing. This is the other, probably most important portion of this. You might have seen this campaign. It's not anything that Dearborn created. It's a national campaign. But to see something, you say something. Honestly, I went through seminars with the FBI. We went through 3 days of every active shooter that's happened. We had specialists from behavioral specialists with the FBI, and they'll tell you that people just don't snap. You see on the news, they say, gosh, Johnny was such a good guy, he must have just snapped. He didn't just snap. Things are going on in their lives. Now, they may not be things that would make you snap, but everybody has their individual thresholds and what they're willing to do when they get there. If you know that somebody's having a hard time with things and you're friends with them, offer them a helping hand. You never know what you could change in someone's life. Offer them a cup of coffee. If you see something that looks suspicious, you got to report it. The video, although it was made for training, is the reality that we have. You saw someone come in, he looks like he belongs on a SWAT team, carrying a bag, yet nobody paid him any attention. There was a security guard standing there, didn't pay him any attention. That's what happens. At the Henry Ford, he came in that day carrying a duffel bag. Inside there was a shotgun. Nobody questioned him. He sat in class with that shotgun sitting next to him. Nobody questioned him. Afterwards, everybody says, I knew this was going to happen, or I knew that was going to happen. We need people to be more engaged with each other. If you're full-time employees here, we have EAP systems. If yourself or if your coworkers need that, those are important things to offer. If you are working that front desk or your particular area and somebody walks in, we make fun of, where did Bob hide? We make fun of Bob. If Bob walks in, his hair's all frazzled out, and he looks like he's upset. You might want to ask Bob if he's doing okay today, and if he's carrying a big duffel bag, you want to engage with him. Yeah. Because you can't just ignore it. I've seen real videos that we investigate here, both the police department, and people just ignore it. I've watched people come into buildings, they have backpacks, it looks like a training video, and it wasn't, and yet people even gave the double take, wow, who are these two guys? And nobody called, nobody did a thing. Now luckily nothing happened that particular day, but it could. So one thing you should take out of here is really we do need to be more involved. Us as a police department will respond to anything. We always say, you know, we're a large, small town. I mean, we still will go for the ducks walking in the road, right? I mean, I've helped elderly ladies carry her groceries in, you know, so her ice cream didn't melt. We still do those things. So for you to call and say, wow, something doesn't look right, we're professional. We'll come in. We're not going to, you know, verbally abuse anybody. We'll go in and we'll talk to them nicely, and if it checks out, fine. You know, we'll send them on their way, or we'll help them wherever they need to go. But we would rather come out and investigate something or talk to somebody than have you not call and have that be the one particular time. As I think Sergeant said a few times, even inside of our city businesses, is good customer service. If you see someone come in, they may look like they're a little off, well, maybe they're just lost or something. You know, you can just ask them if you can help them. Can I help you? That might bring about what's going on. If someone has a reaction to that, then you can hopefully call 911 right away and we can come. So that's the majority of what we have here. I can open it up if anybody has any questions.